Hi there, this is Sean, the Honest Book Reviewer, with another book review. In this video, we're discussing Blowback, written by James Patterson and Brendan DuBois. It's a thriller. I think it will be a standalone, but who knows? Sometimes James Patterson throws in a second book and third book in a series when you think they're going to be standalones. It wasn't the best thriller that's come out by James Patterson. It's a very great concept, so the concept really hooked me and made me want to read this, but the first say 100, 150 pages of this story just felt really slow, bogged down the story. After that, it really picks up. But I think that first section of the book could have been condensed because it does slow down everything in the story. And I've got a feeling that that first section may turn off a lot of readers. Some readers may give it a go, 50 pages, maybe a bit more, and then forget about it. I like to read all the book once I start, and that's the reason I know this book picks up after the first 100 or so pages. So if you can get through that, this book does become quite an enjoyable book. But that first section did colour my view and did affect my rating. Newly elected President Barrett has a plan. He wants to rid the world of any threat to the United States. But is he really thinking of the United States or himself? That's the question that starts going through certain characters' minds and then the reader's mind throughout this story. Is President Barrett really on a campaign to rid the world of people he doesn't like personally? He thinks he's doing the best thing for the United States, but is he really? Is he really pushing the United States to the brink of something they can't turn back from, all because of his own personal vendettas? I won't go into that part of the storyline too much. I don't want to give away some twists and turns that happen with this character. That general theme is so big in the story and plays out so early in the story as well that you can't miss it. So it's not a spoiler for anybody really, but it's a huge theme in this story. To start this plan he asks two CIA operatives. Their names are Noah and Liam. He asks them to be leaders in two groups, two task forces. One group is going to operate overseas, and that's okay because that's what the CIA should do, operate overseas. But then the second group is going to operate on home soil. Now that's going to go across some legal boundaries, I think, and this person, Noah, she questions that because it's against their policy to operate on home soil. But the president convinces them, says he'll get it all signed off. He wants them to do it, and they agree to do it because it's an order from the president. But you get the impression they also agree because if they don't, they think something bad can happen to them. In the first 100 or so pages of this story, we see some of those missions that are going on home soil and overseas. We also see a shift in what they understand that they're doing and how they feel about their orders as well. Noah's the first to question it. Then Liam starts to question it as well. I won't tell you why. I'll just say that as the story progresses, the next section in the book is all about Liam and Noah realizing certain things for factual purposes, but they're also realizing they're also on a list. They're being hunted now. I won't go into why they're being hunted, but they find themselves on the wrong side of the president. And that's where the story really picks up and becomes really gripping and engaging. And it builds up to a massive conclusion at the end of the book. And I really enjoyed that. It becomes a race against the clock in the last section of the book. And that's the section I enjoyed the most, that race against the clock, because it's really gripping, really engaging, really drags you into the story. And other characters come into play in this story as well during the second and third sections of the book. One of the big players in those last two sections is Hannah Abrams, and she's the new CIA director. She's a great character in this book, and for me, the standout character of the story. She's pivotal in big moments in those two sections of the story. And she stands out because she's such a tough character, and she's central to the conclusion, basically. She's central to driving big parts of the plot forward And without her in the story, and without her written so well, I think those two sections would have suffered, and they would have dragged a bit without her, because the way her characters are written, the way her dialogue's written, her actions, her motivations, everything about her really pushes along those last two sections of the book. And she really comes across as the strongest character in this story. What I also liked about this is the complex plot. When you start out, you don't think the plot's so complex. It's a great concept. You think it's going to be very thrilling and engaging, and it ends up being that. But as the story progresses through different sections of this book, you realise different things that happened earlier on in the book. They fall into place a bit more as the story goes on, and you realise why they were there. And that complexity just adds so much to this plot. It's a very complex and well put together story, in my opinion, and you realise that, well, I realised that as I went through towards the end of the book. All these things fit into place, and it just makes you realise that the authors must have got there and planned it out so carefully. Let's give so much away at certain parts of the book. Don't give it all away at the start. Make the reader earn it. And if you read through the whole book and you start to realise what's going on, you start to realise how clever this story is. And I thought that made the overall story itself and plot so enjoyable. And if that first section hadn't been just so tedious to get through, if the pace hadn't have suffered in that first part of the book, I would have rated this book much higher. Liam, one of the operatives who's leading the group overseas, he was written quite cleverly. He's a gung-ho ex-military type character who gets his orders and obeys, no question. But then we get him awakening to certain things, and he has different realizations in the book. And I like that. I like those scenes in the book. They felt really real. And they felt like the character was going through them organically. They weren't forced. And it gave the character more complexity, more realness. And this character felt really complete, I think. And I think it was really clever to include him in certain sections in this book as well, to use him in certain ways. And I won't go into all the ways he was used. I might give away too many spoilers. But I think the way this character shifts through the story and questions things, and point of view shifts at certain parts as the story goes on, that just shows the authors were aware about how to use this character for the best effect and benefit to the reader and to the story. And I think this character really stands out, and I just wonder if this character may turn up in another book. Maybe not a sequel to this book, but maybe a series of his own, because I think the character has enough to stand out on his own in another story. Hannah Abrams, the CIA director in this story, my favourite character in this book, just stands out so much. So much of the book hangs on this character's actions, and the authors use this character very cleverly in the story. And again, it's another character that starts out a bit smaller in the story, but then just expands as the story goes on. Very strong character, very stubborn character, a character that feels organic as well. The actions, motivations, reactions all feel real, not forced. And the character that is powerful in position in the story, but not overly powerful in action. And that's another reason why Hannah Abrams feels so real. President Barrett was okay as a villain in some sections in this book, but in many sections felt overdone, too forced. And it made me think this character felt a bit cartoonish in a way. A bit supervillain and cartoonish. You know, that the threat of this character was downplayed because it just felt too overdone and overplayed. And that's a shame, because the whole concept of this story is very good, very gripping and thrilling. And I think if they toned down President Barrett's character a little bit, gave it more light and shade, rather than having this over-the-top, psychotic kind of character towards the end, I think that would have made this character more sinister, more threatening, and more real, and would have made that evil plot feel more real as well, that threat feel more real to the reader. I enjoyed this story a lot. I enjoyed the last two sections more than the first section. but you get to understand as you're going through this book why all those first section moments are there. They could have been condensed a bit though, and shifted the story along at a quicker pace in that first section. I rated a 3.5 out of 5. And that's because of the first section. If that wasn't so slow, I'm sure I would have rated this more. And also because of President Barrett. His character just feels too supervillain, a bit cartoonish. If they had to tone down that character a bit more as well, I would have rated this more than 3.5. On my channel, I do review quite a few James Patterson books. If you don't want to miss out on those videos, check out my channel and subscribe. I also have a James Patterson playlist on my channel. It should be on your screen now.